tip is supposed to be a little extra bit of money often given to reward good service. But nowadays, in some industries in the US, such as in restaurants in particular, tipping has stopped being a little something extra, and instead it has become the customer actually paying most, if not all, of the employee's earnings. So, is this a good thing or a bad thing? Hey everyone, Donna here, and I think tipping is good and bad. Okay, wait, let me start over. When I lived in the US, I did work as a server for a little while. And let me just start by saying that I'm very sorry to anyone out there who had to have me as their server. I was not cut out for that job, and it wasn't one that I enjoyed at all, but I did like the idea. In fact, I loved the idea that what I earned each day or evening was based on my performance and perhaps a little bit of luck as to who I got as customers. I would go into each shift feeling like the sky was the limit for how much money I could make. If I could just smile and really hustle and get to as many tables as possible without spilling or dropping anything, who knows how much I could earn? Maybe there would be someone really generous who would come in that evening and they would leave me a huge tip that I was probably not so deserving of because I had probably forgotten their drink or messed up their salad. Like I said, not a good server. But sometimes people were just super generous. Sometimes customers just out of their kind hearts left me a very nice tip, but sometimes they didn't. I was left just 13 cents one time, and oh boy, was that a sad moment. I had worked and worked and worked so hard. I was really trying my best, and then I got just 13 cents because the customer decided that I didn't deserve to earn anything more than that. The customer made that decision that I didn't deserve to earn my wage for the work that I had done, which when you think about it is actually a pretty strange thing. That doesn't happen at the movie theater. The customers at movie theaters don't get to decide how much the person who sold them the ticket should make that evening based on how much they smiled or how many mistakes they did or didn't make, or what kind of a mood the customer is in that day. No, that is between the employee and the employer to work out, not the customer. But, well, I mean, whatever. This is just how it's done at restaurants everywhere around the world, right? Wrong. And I had no idea before leaving the US for the first time, but no, it is not the case everywhere in the world that the customers at restaurants are expected to pay most or even any of the server's wage at all. Here in Germany, it is customary for a little tip to be left. Usually I would say around 10%, but here this is a tip in the actual sense of the word, a little something extra on top of what the server is earning. But for example, in Sweden, from my experience, that's not the case. We went to Sweden a few years ago and tried to leave a tip at the restaurant, but they expressly said no, they would not take the tip. They said they had just been doing their job. They wouldn't take it, even though our server had actually gone, as far as I'm concerned, above and beyond her job that day. The restaurant that we had gone to had just recently gotten a new menu and hadn't yet had the chance to translate it into English, so it was only in Swedish. So our server stood there and read through the whole menu to us, translating it into English for us, and still, she would not accept a tip. She said, no, it's just, that's part of my job. I've also heard that there's no tipping in restaurants in Japan too. I don't know firsthand, but that's what I've heard. Okay, fine. But still, this is how it's always been done in the US. So just leave it be. Nope, wrong again. And first of all here, even if something had always been done a certain way somewhere, why in the world would that be a good reason to keep doing it? Just because something has always been done a certain way, if we realize that now it's not actually a good way of doing things, or maybe it was a good way of doing things at one point, but now it's not anymore, then it should be changed regardless of how long it's been done that way, right? But anyway, no, it hasn't always been done like this in the US. According to several articles that I read, which I will link to down below, America actually got their tipping practices from Europe in the latter half of the 1800s. And actually, at first, when tipping was first introduced from Europe into the USA, a lot of people in the US did not like it. Being able to buy better service was actually considered anti-democratic at first in the US. But obviously, over time, that changed. Whereas in Europe, some of the countries from whom the US had actually first gotten the idea of tipping had, by the middle of the 1950s, started scaling back their tipping, either with mandatory service charges on the bill or mandatory wage minimums for the employees. Which brings us to where we are today. So, is tipping like this in the USA bad? Well, as someone who has worked as a server in the US, and as someone who has experienced basically mandatory tipping in the USA, a little tipping in Germany, and from my experience, no tipping in Sweden, I have to say that I personally prefer the whole no tipping thing. As a server in the US, yes, it was kind of exciting to think that the harder I worked, the more money I could make. But for one, that made it all the more devastating when I didn't get a good tip, or any tip at all, especially if I had done everything right and to the best of my abilities. Just because the person eating forgot or didn't feel like tipping or whatever, just because of that, I didn't get paid for my work? Come on, like I said, that doesn't happen in other jobs. Sometimes at restaurants in the US, people don't like the food they ordered, and then because of that, they don't tip the server. Going back to the movie theater example, it's like you can't go out and see a movie, and then if you don't like it, well, sorry, the person who sold you the ticket doesn't get paid that night. But also, because of the tipping system in the US, when I was a server, everything, and I mean everything about my evening became solely focused on making as much money as possible because, like I said, I knew the sky was the limit. So I focused so razor sharply on that bottom line that it really felt like any other measurement of success, like enjoying the evening or making a fun connection with other people, just disappeared. Later, when I worked as a hostess in a restaurant where my earnings were the same no matter what, I got paid per hour by the restaurant, I felt like I was finally able to enjoy my job and enjoy the evening. And for a while, yeah, I did think like, well, but the tipping system in the US incentivizes better service at restaurants, doesn't it? But then I realized that actually makes no sense. If I didn't give good customer service at the restaurant that I worked at as a server, yeah, I guess I wouldn't have gotten good tips, but I also probably would have been fired for not doing my job because giving good customer service is a part of the job of being a server in the US. Customer service is important in America, and I get good customer service in the US in places where there's no tipping at all, like at the grocery store. Or when I worked as a hostess at the restaurant, I wasn't getting any tips, but I still gave great customer service because that was a part of the job. And actually, I felt like I was able to give better customer service as a hostess because I didn't have to worry about those tips. And lastly, as a customer going out to eat, I personally would much rather just have a set service fee that I need to pay automatically added to my bill, or just have the server's payment included in the price of what I'm buying. Just like at other places, like at the movie theater or the bowling alley. The cost of paying the employees is just added into the price that I have to pay when I go do that activity. The system seems to work just fine at other places. Why not at restaurants? But that's just me. So my question for you is, do you think that tipping like this is good or bad? Would you prefer to live in a world without tipping? Please let me know in the comments below. Thank you so much for watching. I really hope that you enjoyed this video. If you enjoyed these videos, please don't forget to subscribe and hit that like button. And also a really big thank you so much to our patrons on Patreon who help make these videos possible. Thank you so much for your support. If you would like to check out our Patreon page, you can find a link to that down in the description box below. Until next time, auf Wiedersehen. Which brings us to where we are today. I'm hungry. Then it should be changed regardless of how long it's been done that way, right? Like we can learn from the past and change the way of doing something. Yes? That's the wonderful thing about humans, I think. Until next time, I'm waving way too soon. Auf Wiedersehen. Okay, I'm done.